Hey there folks, John Henry, lowgenius.net. We are here today to talk about a Christian nation. Now I try to avoid broad-sided attacks on religion, even though I consider myself an atheist or secular humanist. While I really despise religion itself, that doesn't mean I have to extend that distaste to every human being who's a believer, many of whom are just dandy people. That said, I'm really about fed up with this mentality that if I stand up against you using your religion as an excuse to bully and harass people, it means I'm bullying, harassing you, or discriminating against your religion. Bullshit. I don't care about your religion. I do care about how you treat other people. You believe what you want, it's no skin off my nose, right up until you believe that your beliefs give you free license to set public policy, educational curricula, and so forth. I'm really tired of this. A friend of mine posted that video from the Lawrence Welk show for the two chipper, happy little singers doing one toke over the line with no apparent realization what the song was about, which Welk referred to at the end as a modern spiritual in the outro. And some woman comes along whining and railing about, oh my God, why are you picking on us Christians? Nobody said anything about Christians or religion or anything else. A few people were just enjoying the obvious naivety of Mr. Welk. Nobody said anything bad about Christians or religion or Jesus. Nobody, until this ridiculous self-pitying excuse for a human being showed up, had anything negative to say at all, period. Not even a hint of, oh, those silly Christians, or anything like it. Just a bit of giggling at Welk's cluelessness about the fact that the song was about smoking pot. I am sick of this self-pity. Institutionalized Christianity holds this entire country in its sway in direct contravention of both the Constitution and the intent of the founders. We rail and whine and scream that this is a Christian nation in spite of the undeniable and indisputable fact that it is nothing of the sort. Not an intent, not an action, and we never have been. See, I'm not a Christian, but I have read the Bible, and even find some inspiration and foundation of principle in some of the alleged words of Jesus. And I look at the history of this country, folks, and I'm here to tell you, there is not a lot of cheek-turning and being ye kind one unto another, tender-hearted and forgiving, and do unto others as ye would be done by going on around here. And that includes the genocidal notion of manifest destiny. Believe what you want to believe. I won't hold that against you. But when you're going to start using your beliefs as a petty excuse to bitch and whine and throw a self-pity fit at some entirely imaginary insult to your religion, then I'm going to land on your ass with both feet. There's no more sense or reason in that kind of crap than in these Muslims who go around threatening to kill cartoonists who draw Muhammad. You don't have the right to demand that I participate in the observance of your religious beliefs. Period. You sure as hell don't have the right to launch into a self-pitying tirade about how persecuted you are because you imagine some insult about your religion. I'll respect people's right to believe what they want all day long, but I have zero respect for that bullshit from any religion or ideology. And again, I want to be clear that I'm not painting all Christians or all anybody's with this brush. I'm specifically addressing these remarks to that specific subset of Christians or any other brand of deists who insist on asserting that any attempt to avoid or resist their aggressive, hostile attempts to force their religion on everyone else constitutes discrimination against them. Which brings us to the second half of this rant, inspired by an editorial I found on the right-wing-owned AL.com site, one of the many cookie-cutter, state-oriented websites that have done a fair job of taking over local print media over the last few years. And these are the same folks who own sites like MLive.com in Michigan and NJ.com in New Jersey. This letter to the editor, an ill-informed screed whining about how troops are supposedly going to be court-martialed for being Christians, which is a complete load of bullshit, included these words, and I'm quote, "There's strange or weird paradox here. There's many of the same crowd are active in pushing for acceptance of a Muslim presence, including thousands of Muslims being allowed to pray in the middle of busy streets 5 times daily, specifically on Fridays. Major streets in New York and elsewhere are being shut down to accommodate these Muslims." And he cites news reports. And it ends with this. Why should law-abiding Christians be forced to even go to the expense of asking our courts to rectify this injustice? If you feel this is wrong, please join me in speaking out for Christian values and freedom of expression of our soldiers everywhere. This is absolutely terrifying. Not the targeting of Christians, but the outrageous level of entitlement and misinformation contained in this one short letter. First, note some basic assumptions that this guy's making, that we're all Americans are all Christians or religious at all. Clearly, by this gentleman's way of thinking, if you are not a Christian, you are not an American. Second, look at the damage done by the ethically bankrupt Andrew Breitbart, who's cited in this editorial here, even in death. His policy carried on by the websites he left behind of pimping bigotry and outrage and high emotion, low information news to credulous marks continues with the outrageous and, if not for the fact that some folks, like the author of this editorial, are clearly so hoodwinked that they believe it, comical distortions of reality. There is no punishment for sharing or discussing your religion in the military. There is punishment for proselytizing in the military because that is not your job. Even a military cleric is not paid to convert people, only to counsel them. And again, note this man's ingrained sense of entitlement. It hasn't even crossed his mind that the same rule prevents adherents of other religions, including Islam, which I'm sure is the one he's worried about, from attempting to convert fellow soldiers. It's just automatically assumed that Christianity is the only religion and it is being targeted. The nonsense of city streets being shut down to accommodate Muslim prayers is hallucination. I can find only one reference to this happening in a WordPress blog called Creeping Sharia. This is supposed to be a reliable and objective source of information. What has happened to our critical thinking skills? Oh, that's right. They've been shredded by Christian fundamentalists pushing their myths and their beliefs on public schools as science. The same way these Christian fundamentalists have repeatedly and often successfully attempted to write laws about commerce, healthcare, reproduction, and every other aspect of life in these United States. This is exactly where the idiocy of the Texas Department of Education taking a stand against critical thinking comes from. How warped and evil do you have to be to believe that teaching people to think clearly is an attack on your religion? Do you not grasp that this is an overt admission that your religion can't stand up to logical and reasoned scrutiny? Do you not grasp that this is an express concession that you are afraid to learn how to think because you are more interested in personal comfort than in making any effort or even allowing anyone else to make any effort to understand the world around them without relying on some mythical sky daddy on whom you can blame anything you don't understand? Of course, that's okay because we're a Christian nation, right? Never mind that such an assertion flies in the face of every bit of recorded history and the U.S. Constitution. My question is this. If we're such a Christian nation, when are we going to get around to loving thy neighbor as thyself, or being ye kind one unto another, tender-hearted and forgiving, or judging not, lest ye be judged, or turning the other cheek, or giving your cloak also? Where is this scripture that so many self-proclaimed Christians are reading that doesn't contain all these bits and so many more that appear in my Bible? How many Christians were randomly targeted for violence and even murder after the Oklahoma City bombings, which were committed by a Christian? The way Muslims, who were sometimes actually Hindus or just brown-skinned people, were beaten and killed after 9/11 and the Boston Marathon bombing a few weeks ago. And then it's the old saw of soldiers and their rights. Now, my dad was a U.S. Marine, and any soldier who spent more than a week in BCT will tell you that for the most part, soldiers don't have rights. You enlist, your ass belongs to Uncle Sam. And now while a subset of the rights afforded to citizens are preserved, most are not. Not freedom of speech, there's no Fourth Amendment protection, the 10th Amendment is completely moot. The U.S. Army Field Manual, Chapter 10, quote, freedom of expression. These rights must, however, be consistent with good order and discipline and national security. Generally, soldiers may not write on the following topics without prior review: national government operations, military matters, foreign policy. Soldiers are not allowed to speak before a partisan political gathering of any kind. They may not promote a candidate. They may not even attend partisan political events. They're heavily restricted from sales and solicitation activities. They can't run for office. There are hundreds of other restrictions on soldiers' rights, and they know it when they enlist. Now, the author of this editorial calls for people to, quote, join him in speaking out for Christian values. I would respectfully submit that before asking for others to join him, he first familiarize himself with these values, because in no way are they represented in the ill-informed, dishonest, and self-pitying screed he has written. And I would respectfully submit to any believer that if you think your religious beliefs give you a right to expect special protection or consideration under the law in the United States, you probably ought to take a good hard look at the Constitution, because it's pretty clear you don't have that right. You certainly don't have the right to tell people who they can marry, or to insist that public schools teach your religious myths as science, or to demand a display of your religious edicts in state-owned properties, or to in any way otherwise attempt to force people who don't share your religious beliefs to participate in them. That's the First Amendment. It's not an attack on Christianity. It's a defense against Christianity and all other religions. And if you're engaged in that kind of behavior and still can't figure out why anyone needs to defend themselves against religion, then you, my friend, are part of the problem. And you need to take a hard look at yourself. Ask yourself how you'd feel if a Muslim demanded that a list of Quran verses was posted in the local courthouse, or if a group of Navajo shaman demanded that your schools teach their creation myth to your children as science. Learn how to see something, anything, from someone else's perspective, and try to think about how you'd feel if they treated you the way you're trying to treat them. It's really not that hard to figure out that nobody's persecuting or censoring your precious religion. They're just trying to be free of it, which, as the First Amendment and multiple essays and letters by our founding fathers make abundantly clear, is their right, guaranteed and protected by our system of government. There are theocracies in the world. Try living in one for a while and see how that works out for you. And you might just start to understand why nobody with any sense in this country is interested in having your religion forced on them. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Religion is just like masturbation. Just about everybody does it. Just about everybody who does it thinks that the way that they do it is the best way. But unless I am very intimate with you and I ask you directly, I don't want to see you do it. I don't want to know how you do it. And I sure as shit don't want you taking my tax dollars and going into my public schools to tell my children that the way you do it is the only way they should do it. Keep it to yourself. I've been John Henry. Thanks for watching. HelloGenius.net. Links all over the place. You know the drill. Spread, like, share. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next time.